Well, welcome back to our day of coverage here, the 2016 Peter Baccani Vancouver Fencing World Cup on Via Sport. I'm your host, Chris Brentlinger-Grant, joined as we have for the entire morning by Tigran Bagoric, who's of course a former Canadian national team member, and he won 5 Canadian national championships, and he got a bronze medal as well at the Individual World Cup in 2008. We cycled around to a couple of different pistes here as we've seen the preliminary round. We just got through the round of 32 team matchups. We're on to the round of 16, and the one that we have for you here focuses on our yellow piste. On that one, we will see the 8 and 9 seed Czech Republic against the Hungarians. Tigran, you know the Hungarian team very well. Coming here as the number 9 seed, what do you think they're going to be able to do against the Czech Republic that'll give them an advantage or maybe even a disadvantage against their opponents?
Of course, Hungary, I know that team really well. I've been training in Hungary before when I was on the national team. They're a really, really strong team. We have Imre Géza, who is the current world champion, and we have a couple of their guys. Got a little bit of a blank right now on their names. But this is a team that Imre Géza goes way back, 96, bronze medalist in team Olympic Games in Atlanta. So he's been around for a long time, very experienced, really strong team. I love it, strange that they're actually ranked top 8 because they're a team that I would say should be in the top 4, but I guess fencing is such a unique sport you can end up anywhere. So they're fighting for their last Olympic spot, the 8th spot to qualify for Rio Olympic Games. And depending on what the outcome is today and how Germany does or how they do, that's who's going to be occupying the last spot for the Rio Olympic Games.
Yeah, talking about just qualifying for the Olympic Games. Earlier, we had the news for you. We didn't have it on our feed, but we had news that Japan was able to get by Egypt by one single touch. That set a lot of things in motion, and it changes the day completely, doesn't it?
Yeah, so obviously Egyptian team is very upset. They basically only had to make the top 16 just because of the way the rankings work and the zonal qualifier versus the individual qualifier. It's not who is the top 8 teams in the world. It's because of the zonal kind of definitions. Sometimes teams that are just making it into the top 16 can qualify for the Olympic Games. So in this case, Egypt needed to make the top 16, didn't make it, so that just leaves it up to basically now leaves a spot for one of the additional European countries to qualify. In this case, it's Germany or Hungary.
Well, as we move on here, plenty of teams have been able to move on to the round of 16. We saw Israel get by Canada in one of our feature matches earlier. We also saw Japan, as we just alluded to, and the United States will be playing against the Ukraine as the number 15 seed. I want to ask, because the rankings in a tournament like this, you're not always thinking about them, but when it comes to playing a powerhouse nation like France or the Ukraine or even Switzerland, it's really important that you get as high a ranking as possible. See, here you said that Hungary maybe shouldn't be number 8, should be maybe 4 or 5. The way it plays out, if they win here against the Czech Republic, they play the winner of France and Israel, and that doesn't seem like a very positive thing, at least for morale moving forward. Of course, you want to move forward, but playing against the French could be an almost impossible task if they indeed do make it past the Israelis.
Yeah, so definitely France is the strongest team, and they've been ranked number 1 in the world for many years, multiple times gold medalists. Probably, I think they had the highest number 9 times in a row, world champions in team. And they were only upset for the 10th time in a row in 2012 when they lost to the Americans. So the Americans upset them in a very close match, and as they were trying to kind of break their own record of 9-10 times in a row to become a world champion. So Hungary facing against France is usually in that outcome we have France beating them just because of the type of style of fencing. For some reason the French tend to win. But of course anything can happen in this day.
As the teams sort of gather their thoughts and continue to warm up a little bit, just going to ask you, we were talking a little bit off air about the path that France might have to the championship, if that were indeed to happen here at the Richmond Oval. If it isn't France, who could it be? Who do you think could knock off, be one of the stronger teams here, and maybe even turn some heads perhaps as a little bit of a surprise?
We have on the other side, we have Switzerland or Ukraine. And I think Switzerland is a young team, but very experienced, very confident. They've been doing very successful last few years. They've been very successful in team and individually. They have two very highly ranked fencers. So there's possibility there that Switzerland could possibly upset France. But of course, France would still get to qualify as they're ranked #1 in the world. An upset wouldn't hurt them as much as some of the other countries.
See, we have the drawn-out complete rankings in front of us here. You can see it goes France, Ukraine, Italy, and then Switzerland. So you're saying basically nobody outside of the top 4. Of course, anything can happen. We've seen our share of upsets, but the way you're seeing it, the way the bracket plays out, France versus the winner of our feature match here on yellow, and then eventually either Korea, Estonia, Spain, or Italy. I think Italy as a number 4 seed could come right back in there as well.
Yeah, obviously Italy is most likely they're going to be qualifying for the Rio Games. No, it's very unlikely to be upset. The first 4 teams are basically in it. It's just we're fighting for the next spots. Like, who is it going to be? Is it going to be Russia? Is it going to be Hungary? Is it going to be Germany? And all these teams, this is the last qualifier. Everything's on the line. Lots of emotion here. Everybody's a little bit nervous and also like very excited to be fencing. So this is really now down to skill and who is the most mentally strong on the piste, who can overcome that pressure.
Continuing with the Italian theme here, what can you say about the performance we saw yesterday from Enrico Garosso? Defeating Konstantin Baum in the championship. A lot of fencing, and I think like the Israeli fencer we saw a little bit earlier, you could tell he was fatigued, but nobody went through more bouts yesterday than Garosso, and he's really, in a sense, the backbone of the Italian team. Do you think that would have any effect on how the Italians are able to perform today?
Of course, I mean, they're highly trained, they're very professional, that's all they do. We call it amateur sports, but these guys are paid to be fencers, and of course he's in very good shape. He's going to be a little bit fatigued today because he did so well yesterday, but you know, Italian is basically a shoe-in for Rio. So now we have Hungary shaking hands with Czech Republic, starting the matches. Czech team, of course, have some kind of veterans on their team. Petra is very experienced. We're going to see a team that's been together for a long time. That, of course, makes a big difference. Whenever you have new members on the team, sometimes you don't have the same team bond. But when you have teams like Hungary and Czech who've been together and fencing for years and many times in the same club, because you know, some of those countries it's much smaller, so they all usually are from the same club. So it makes a huge difference in terms of how you fence as a team.
Just some early visuals here, a clear distinction, I think, between the Hungarian side and the team from the Czech Republic. Hungary seems a little bit uptight, you know, hunched over. We just had it for you. Whereas the fencers from the Czech Republic, everyone's talking, sort of laughing. Earlier we had one guy using his weapon as a fishing lure as he noticed the camera was right on him. What advantage do you think it could be, you could bring into the match by just having a more loose attitude? Of course you want to win the match. These teams are right next to each other in the rankings, but it seems like they couldn't be any more polar opposites with the mentality heading into the team match here.
It's hard when you have something on the line. Czech Republic, even though they're a very good team, they're ranked 11 currently, and very unlikely to qualify on Rio unless they pulled off something really crazy like win it. But it hasn't been the case so far. They haven't medaled in the past, although they're a very strong team. Of course, they're going to be more relaxed. There's less on the line. Hungarian team, a lot on the line here, a lot to lose. Of course, they're multiple-time Olympic medalists. We have Bocska there, we have Imre, we have some, you know, lots of experience. They're old-time veterans, and that's usually their star. Hungarians tend to be a little more reserved. They don't tend to show their emotions as much as some of the other teams.
So we'll have Gabor Bocska against Pavel Petra. Any surprise to you on who the coaches are sending out here? It seems pretty well household names get it started here in this round of 16 match.
Yeah, so Bocska is usually the one that gets it started for Hungary, and Imre is usually the one that finishes. In this case, Petra is a very good fencer. He's going to be going up against Bocska. The styles, they're about the same height, so same type of reach, very different style of fencing. Although Hungary and Czech Republic are very close, so many times they do have training camps together. And they do cooperate a lot in terms of, like, you know, sharing training resources and so on.
So much as we're underway here, so much as the sort of final 32-16, so on in the individual tournaments, you're facing guys in a match like this that you face almost regularly. I mean, the countries do have to come together, as you were mentioning. Czech and the Hungarians are very close, but that might not be the other case in some of the other matches, say the Israelis facing the Canadians today.
Yeah, so even though you do see the same people over and over in every single World Cup, you tend to kind of face certain people more often. The closer you are, of course, you know, we tend to fence a lot more with Americans than the Israeli teams. And Petra here scoring a first touch, taking the lead. Of course, doesn't mean anything yet. They're both just kind of testing each other, seeing each other's skills. They both know each other well. They would have fenced each other many times in training and in competition. And
I think Petra seeming a little bit lighter, more bouncy. That's his style?
Yeah, he's very much balanced on his feet, tends to move a little more, whereas Hungarian is a little more precise with his footwork, doesn't give up much space. Very, very slow, methodical movements. Most of his actions will come from his hand versus his feet.
Boczko did a good job playing defense there and backing up, but not entirely. We've seen everything pretty well in the middle of the piece so far.
Yeah, that's what he's like. Now he has the pressure because they are down a little bit, so he's going to be pushing a little bit, but very carefully, very much trying for the hand only at first, trying to draw Petra out because he has a very strong parry, and of course, no blade work for more than a minute. We go into passivity. So next match, Rubeš versus Redley. Rubeš, I'm not so familiar with Rubeš. He's a very young fencer, so not as experienced, of course, as Redley. Redley is a multiple-time World Cup medalist. Very good, one of their strongest Hungarian fencers. Most likely we can see Boczko and Emir retiring in the next phase, and Redley will be taking the lead on that team, in the Hungarian team.
How about from the Czech perspective, to go into the state of non-combativeness with Petra giving your team a 1-0 lead over Boczko? Is that the plan for Czech Republic? Just take your points when you can get them, not give up points in spurts, because you know the Hungarians are very sound technically. They can score in bunches. Was that the plan coming out, or just sort of the way the fighters ended up feeling each other out and sort of decided, no, we'll get back to it later?
Well, you know, obviously everybody when it gets on the piece, they want to score points. But at this time, you know, we just kind of feel each other out at the beginning. You want to see, be very careful, not give up anything in terms of space, in terms of like your technique. You don't want to be making big movements. You're just kind of taking it easy, hoping that, of course, that the other person makes mistake and you just stay stable in terms of your hand and in terms of your feet. I'm sure the Czech team was told to be on the defensive, not going to attack, because Hungarians have a very good defensive game.
Not a whole lot here so far. Definitely feeling each other out. It seems Rubeš is just basically hitting the épée around, trying to see if he can get any sort of advantage. And once again, a lot more light on his feet, so you can tell, though the nations are very close, a very different form of styles, at least in terms of movement.
Yeah, they all have different, either in terms of footwork or in terms of like blade work that they do. You know, now Redley pushed the Czech team into the zone and did a nice flash, but unfortunately Czech guy scored a counterattack before he could touch him. So I think Hungarian team will probably be trying again to score a point and try and take advantage of you know, this young and inexperienced fencer from Czech, although it's very difficult. They both have very long reach, and it's of course always difficult to go on the offensive.
Tell Rubeš there, you're saying young, inexperienced, but certainly very emotional after being able to avoid that flesh and getting the point against the Hungarian definitely on his side of the piece, almost right back onto his own bench.
Yeah, so he was already 1 foot over the line, very much in his corner, couldn't move any more back. Basically only had to go forward. And Hungarian took very good advantage of that distance. Flashed, unfortunately, just missed, and Czech was able to score a point. Very emotional. He's, you know, he knows that he's fencing a multiple-time medalist. So of course, he feels like he's the underdog, and he wants to be scoring points and doing well for his country and team. similar situation now, similar setup, and this time Redley scored, of course.
Rubesh didn't like it, though. He immediately called for the official to take a look at his weapon. I think he thought for sure he got the double touch. Zira's
He
come right in, but Rubesh, you can see appealing, just wanting to at least even it out to keep the 2-point advantage, but Ridley able to get Hungary back within one.
Yeah, very methodical movement forwards, just like looking for that opening, you know, still pushing him step by step into his corner. Of course, when they're in the middle, it's kind of like everybody's game. It's usually nothing happens when they're in the middle, and only the more action type movement happen when they're in one zone or the other zone. Just because you know, it becomes more of a kind of a footwork game. What can you do? Usually when you push in the corner, you can only go forward, so it kind of limits the amount of movements or the type of movements you're doing.
Well, we've seen Rubesh basically at the end of every exchange end up on his side of the piece. Hungary just pushing forward. Is that something that's bad for Rubesh, or can he live with that so long as, you know, he's staying on top, being on his toes?
It's usually that's the type of style that they're used to being pushed into the zone, but it's very kind of uncomfortable. If you ever fence, you would feel very uncomfortable getting pushed into a corner. It's like, and the emotions start to play in. You kind of feel like, okay, I have to do something, and in your head you just kind of probably usually start to panic a little bit unless you kind of experience in that defensive game. And I'm not sure exactly what type of style he has. Is it more offensive or defensive fencer? Usually, many times the Hungarians are more defensive fencers, so they're comfortable being in whatever corner. Versus some of the other guys, they will, especially young guys, will often flash or attack when they're being a little bit pressured. But very good strategy there from the Czech. Very patient, keeping the score close. It's anybody's game still. We have now Beran and Imre fencing. Beran, of course, is the oldest guy on the Czech team, the most experienced medalist also multiple times. And against the long-time veteran from Hungary, Imre.
It's the only 3 points scored so far through 2 separate matches. Any surprise there? Just very prudent, sort of careful fencers going up against each other and not wanting to give up too much, at least early on.
Yeah, the Hungarians are not risking anything, and neither the Czechs. At this point in time, they just kind of just being patient, seeing how how the opponent is moving. If they're trying to analyze them. As in the first 3 rounds, usually you kind of seeing if there's any gaps that you can exploit, and then when they get returned to the bench, they're kind of talking with each other and kind of sharing tips and what to do in the next matches. So at this point, it looks like this match will go also into passivity. There's been no movement. 1 minute's going to be in a couple seconds, and the referee just about to call it. There we go. Next round.
And out of that, you can see the Czech bench celebrating.
Yeah, so they feel like it's a win if they didn't get any points, and in some cases it is. The Hungarians, a little bit surprisingly, are not risking anything at this point. But they would these guys, Beran and Bochko and Imre, they would have fenced many times over, and so in training and in competition, so they know when they want to be risking. So in this case, now we have Bochko, longtime veteran of the Hungarian team, against Rubesh, the younger guy. I feel like he's going to be probably trying to risk something, pushing him more, applying more pressure now.
When is that time that you start risking things? Is it when you're down by multiple points, or can you just sort of turn it on? If you're a coach, you can instruct your team. We think the other team's back on their heels, maybe a little bit comfortable. Is there a set time, or when you're down in the match, is it always scripted?
It's never really scripted. Of course, when you're down a lot of points, then you have to, go all in. In this case, usually when you have a younger fencer, a little bit less experience, you would probably try and take advantage of that. There's a lot of room now. This is the 3rd or 4th round. Not quite sure. So there's a lot of points. You can go up to 15, 20 points. So you would try and see if you can go on some kind of run and see if you can get some kind of streak going. And of course, it depends on what happens in the next couple of points. Is he gonna get points hit, or is he gonna hit? So we see Bochko very much extended, small movements forward and methodical, and but the opponent is not giving up much space there. So
yeah, Rubej being sent right back out by the Czech on their lineup, playing almost identically to the way that he did that he was fighting as we saw him 2 matches ago, pinned almost right back in his own end and bouncing all the way around. Seems to be conceding territory, but not a whole lot of action so far.
No, and exactly. So I think Hungary probably wants to be taking advantage of this match. But of course, we have 1 minute. If nothing happens within 1 minute, no points, it's automatic passivity. So now they're basically down to 15 seconds. So we will probably see Hungary trying to make a touch within the next 15 seconds, either a double or a single, or anything can happen. So very much pressure, and a nice pair riposte as a Czech Republic fencer committed to an attack. So score is 2-2 tied now.
Good job using perhaps a little bit of experience by Boschko to be able to swing that move. I think Rubej certainly seems like the youngest fighter out there, at least by the Czech Republic on their team. But tell Boschko's experience by changing up that move, something that he's certainly planned a couple moves in advance.
Yeah. So he's going to be pressuring in more and more. Of course, Hungarians are never nice touch there to the hand. They're never kind of fast on their legs like some of the French fencers, where they can just swing back and forth like really long distances. Very much fluid. Hungarians are more very small steps, very methodical forward or backwards. And score is now 3-2 for Hungary.
Boschko able to get some of the momentum on the Hungarian side. Rubej conceding 2 points. After a lot of non-combativity, has really limited the score here to 5 total points. I believe this is the 5th matchup we've seen.
Yeah, so this is the 4th or 5th matchup. We see Hungarians are still very reserved on the bench, and Boschko is still very careful, making small steps. Usually, when Hungary has a nice lead, they're able to kind of hold that, even if it's 1 or 2 points. They're so good defensively that they're very comfortable with even the tiniest of leads.
So they go into that state of non-combativity, and here we go, switching things up again. Petra right back out for the Czechs here in front of us. Anything surprise you so far about the lack of combat that's really gone on here? Do you think it's all part of, as the tournament goes on, become more and more careful? You don't want to take those chances, because a couple points here and there, that could be your entire tournament.
Yeah, so we definitely see Hungarians taking a very kind of a more defensive, slow approach. They don't want to risk anything here, and we see that it's paying off. They're already in the lead, and now they'll be probably trying to kind of maintain it or even up it. So I would assume that Imre might be taking a little bit of a defensive motion here, and Petra will be moving forward on the offense. So we see right away, as as the team leads or loses the lead, sometimes the emotions on the bench can change so quickly, and we see it with the audience, and we see it with the teams on the bench, as the members on the bench, as the team goes up or down. So
I think even just looking over past the field of play, if you look at the Hungarian bench, if we get a shot here, you might think they're just all statues. Very sad statues, very focused, very experienced, methodical, but very different from what we're seeing from the Czech Republic at the beginning. And with that point by Petra to tie it up at 3's almost like a frat house.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting. It's just like, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, or is it just the old veterans, they know so much what they want to be doing. They're just so focused on their game. They don't like to show emotion. So it's a Imre takes again the lead here for Hungary. Imre is a little much more mobile on his legs, even though he's one of the oldest fencers on the world rankings. He is very, very good on his feet. He's very mobile, very physically fit, and really strong technically with his hands.
Petra able to hang with him so far. 4-4 now, a lot more scoring than we saw earlier on. And Petra looking over to his coach. He's feeling very emotional, and Imre's back Petra all the way back up. It seems like they always end up in the Czech side of the piece so far.
Yeah, that's I guess that's where the Hungarians feel comfortable pushing them into their zones, and Petra seems to be comfortable on that last line, just his foot standing on the line, basically no more space to move backwards. It's a very risky type of situation to be in, but of course you don't want to be attacking somebody who's very strong defensive. Nice double touch there. Scores 6-5 for Hungary. So Imre is still applying pressure, moving forward, and pushing him into the Czech corner. Another double touch. So long flash from Petra, but Imre was able to counterattack. So definitely we see a lot more points here. Time is still 1:40. Imre is trying to take advantage of the lots of room to score, trying to kind of draw Petra out like he just did, and counterattack and parry into his attacks.
I think moves like the one that we just saw would be very typical of what you're describing, the Hungarian style of fencing, as just wait and wait and wait, and when it comes to you, be ready for it. And we saw right there Imre saying one of the more experienced fighters definitely in the world rankings. Petra jumping all over the place, but the Hungarians just moving forward, and then striking when there's an opening.
Yeah. So in this case, of course, I think the Czech would be happy with a kind of a passivity, but Imre is not letting that happen. He's actively attacking, being offensive and scoring points. So it's a very good strategic move for Hungary. Applying pressure and nice counterattacks into Czech's offense.
Hungary now up by 4. This is biggest lead we've seen so far, the most scoring in any round, I believe. The way that Imre's just been able to handle Petra. Petra's body language is still really good, but you have to be thinking, looking for ways in order to at least keep the team the deficit just at 4 here moving on.
Yeah, so Petra has tried a whole bunch of moves. None of it seems to be working, so he's kind of seeing what can he exploit from Imre, and he just scored a nice touch. And he'll probably try to repeat the same action, but with type of fencers that Imre is, where he's such a huge repertoire of moves, able to do any type of technical move, it's very hard to catch him off guard. Balance. So we see first time kind of Hungarian fencer moving into their zone, moving backwards. He feels comfortable now with the lead that he kind of wants to go into a passivity situation. And we see Petra trying to kind of see if he can gain some points back, but it's next match. So
they go into passivity, shake hands at the end, and we are coming out for the Czech Republic. Baran again, the veteran, maybe some words for his teammates on the side, not to get too high or too low. Body language between the benches is very different, but I think it benefits the Czechs certainly to have someone of a presence like the one they're getting from the guy who's coming out right now.
Yeah, of course he's the most experienced Czech fencer, and they're kind of relying on him to kind of carry the team, as you will. But of course it's never easy because he is just as good, or if not, the same basically as all the Hungarians. Such a deep field in the Hungarian team, so it's going to be very challenging for him. And the score is still close. It's only 3-point difference, so anything can happen still at this point. I would see probably Baran trying to go on the offensive, trying to see if he can draw Redley out and try and parry probably. Baran is not a fencer that usually flashes. He would be more lunging.
Meanwhile, from the Hungarian side, perfectly happy to just settle for double touches?
Yeah, perfectly happy to settle for double touches, perfectly happy to settle into their zone, move backwards. Redley's so good defensively, he'll just be waiting now this time and trying to draw Baran into his zone. And Redley has no problem just staying there on the last, foot on the line, waiting for Baran. Redley thought he hit, but no touches. No touches. So back to Angar they go. With 3 points, Baran is basically forced to go on an offensive now.
And so this is one of the very first times we've seen most of the action down on the Hungarian side of the piste. one of the first times that Czech Republic has realized that they need to go on the offensive. A little bit of a different view here with Hungary all the way back.
So nice double touch here. Basically, yeah, so the strategy of kind of passivity does no longer apply here for Czech Republic as Hungary takes the lead. So they will have to go on defensive, changing their tactic, and it's a whole other ball game now. So as Redley goes into his corner, he's relying on his defensive moves, on his parries, and Iran has to do a long lunge or long attacks now in order to kind of gain any momentum, if you want.
Yeah, the Czech fencers moving forward and forward, but Hungary's so confident back on their defense in their zone, just getting back-to-back double touches. Have to be happy with that as we're running the score farther and farther up.
Yeah, so that's the whole strategy now for Hungary. I mean, at this point, it's just see if you can keep the doubles going. Just stay in your zone, stay low on your feet, and just wait it out. Because you know that the Czech fencer will have to come out, will have to be trying to attack you. So, and Redley's trying to pick him off on his hand, just waiting patiently. He's got such a strong hand. It's hard to take their blade. And as Redley risked it here, he scores a kind of a little bit of an ugly touch, but the touch nonetheless.
Very quickly coming out towards, probably not what he was going for, but just adjusting on the fly, being able to get that touch and put him up by 5 points.
Yeah, as he kind of flashed and then got his blade taken away, quickly disengaged and hit. Not the prettiest of touches, but able to bring the lead up to 5 now.
See Redley very emotional about that one. The Hungarian way of doing things, you celebrate when you've done something well, but other than that, it's all sort of very calm, preserve your energy, I want to say. Maybe not get too far ahead of yourself. Czech bench has gone a little bit more quiet since we saw them at the beginning of the match.
Yeah, the momentum has definitely shifted to the Hungarians now, and Czech have to be changing their strategy. We see only 3 of their fencers are dressed. The 4th substitute is still kind of warm, sitting on the bench, so it doesn't look likely that they'll do any substitutes. They're going to rely on their core 3. But it's going to be very difficult for them to come back with 5-point lead now for Hungary. And Imre, the current world champion, fencing against one of their Rubeš from Czech Republic. We'll still see some kind of offensive action from the Czechs.
Sort of the elder statesman against someone who's not a rookie, but a lot less experienced. How difficult do you think that could be for someone in Rubeš's position, going against someone who's basically seen it all, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah, it's very challenging. It's yeah. So, as a rookie, fencing is one of those sports that you have to make a lot of mistakes until you kind of start to understand how that works. And sometimes it depends on who you've been training with and what kind of styles you feel comfortable with. And I would assume they feel comfortable with the Hungarian style because they would probably be sharing training camps a lot. But at this point, Imre is one who's seen it all, so it's hard to challenge a guy like that. Let's see. Imre also feeling very comfortable defensively, but he never has a problem attacking you with a nice lunge or just risking it, like we just saw. So it's still, we got 5 seconds and no hits have happened, so very likely this will go into passivity as well. And Hungarians have no problem with that with such a solid 6-point lead.
Not disappointing in that you have one of your leaders, one of your veterans out there, and you would settle for passivity. This isn't a matchup that you want?
Yeah, so whenever somebody doesn't feel comfortable, usually they will try and go into passivity because they just don't know how to approach that fencer, how to attack him, or how to defense against them. So sometimes passivity is such a core strategy for some of the teams. But of course, both teams have to be on board in order to go into that strategy.
You see Hungary has a solid 6-point lead here, certainly settling for double touches. And
no problem, yeah, sitting back, waiting for the Czech to kind of attack and expose themselves to mistakes, basically.
Can you just describe what happened there and why there weren't any points? What happened? Why did the referee call things down?
It just, as he flashed, he stepped off bounds. Now we see another double touch here as the Czech fencer is trying to attack, but having trouble going through the parries, but able to kind of still pull off a double. They're fencing in the middle of the piece still, kind of like Hungarian is kind of lining him up in the middle. So nice touch. So usually fencers you can use the strategy going to the one zone or another, for example, going into their own zone, being defensive, being offensive, going to the opponent's zone, but also on the piece. The piece is about 1.5 meters, so you can position yourself in the piece either in the middle or on one of the sides, depending if you're fencing a lefty or righty, or sometimes how you want to be taking their, if you want to be taking their blade, you might want to be more to one side or the other. So
well, this has to be encouraging for the Czech Republic that Rubeš, one of their least experienced guys, can come out here and get a couple of points back. They trail by 5, but Hungary as well, just being able to get the double touches, running up the score, not conceding too much has to be good for them as well.
Yeah, so I mean, Hungary is a very, very comfortable lead right now. 5-point lead is something that they're easily comfortable, easily can play with, and they're not gonna, we most likely won't see them into the Czech zone anymore unless the Czechs are able to get at least a couple points back. So, which seems to be happening now. You can see the Czech bench yelling and screaming, trying to pump up their fencer on the piece, and a very quiet Hungarian bench.
Just 4 points back. You might not be able to tell which of the sides is actually ahead. They're saying that the Czechs very happy to be trailing by only 3, and the Hungarians don't seem to be satisfied when they're leading by 7.
Yeah, so we see that if you would just look at the benches, you would think that the Czech team is on the lead, but the Hungarians are such a emotionally reserved team. They're very methodical, very careful. They don't want to waste any energy. They're, older team experience. They usually kind of like to sit back and just kind of watch the match and make strategic moves rather than waste the energy on cheering, which is interesting. It's partially cultural and partially kind of experience.
So Tigran, has anything surprised you so far? Hungary up by 3 points. At least so far, not a whole lot of scoring early on. Seems like the pace picked up a little bit, but Hungary seems to be satisfied and reserved with where they're at as we move towards the later rounds.
Yeah, so I was a little bit surprised that Imre didn't try to attack a little bit more, use his strong offense as well as his defense to kind of even get a greater lead. But I think this is a team that's just so comfortable with like 3-point leads that, if they don't want to waste energy, why should they be going forward? And they're probably trying to reserve the energy for the next match against possibly France. So we'll see much more, I think, just defensive actions right now and just trying to hold on to the lead and even make it extended if possible.
I think you can see from some of those replays, just you're able to notice the score in the background as they were running, how the match has changed, where sort of sequentially we went from this side of the piece right in front of us is the Czech bench over towards the Hungarian side. As things have sort of opened up for the Hungarians, they're more content to play defense and let the game come to them, so to speak. They don't feel the need to pressure as much as they were early on.
Yeah, so as a team kind of gains the lead, they don't feel any, like a team like Hungary would feel no pressure to just kind of go and make any risks. So, and we see that now neither of them feel comfortable attacking each other, so they're going into passivity right away. And it's off to Petra and Redley. So interesting that their strongest fencer, Biran, wasn't comfortable going into any type of offensive situation with Bochko.
And you can see the guys, which was you on the screen for one of the first times, happy we were able to actually get a shot of the Czech celebrations, how loose they are. Pavel Petra, the guy who's out on the piste right now, a couple of their younger guys sort of celebrating the non-combativeness, and I don't know, the Czech fencer wasn't super into the celebrations, but keeping the mood light as we move on to the later rounds could really have benefit to them. But you also have to stay focused on the task at hand as well.
Yeah, so they're just trying to keep their energy up, trying to stay motivated, even though they're down. They're trying to stay motivated, trying to stay in the game, focused, and that's sometimes the strategy against, what do we say, younger, not so deep teams. Often the Canadian teams we will be cheering, even though we're down. We're always trying to keep our energy up. Versus we have really experienced teams like France, who are sometimes more reserved, or Hungary is a little more reserved. Just because they rely more on, they want to keep their energy, reserve or back. So.
And I think you can tell that point with the footwork as well. Very deliberate, more heavy footing by the Hungarians, more defensive certainly. Petra, one of the guys who we were illustrating earlier, sort of dancing around back and forth, trying to get angles and stuff. Hungary can tend to just let the Épée sort of angle the opponent off to the sides to maybe preserve energy, but it's also just the way of doing things from a Hungarian background.
Yeah, they just, Petra is trying to kind of make motions, big steps back and forth, trying to get the Hungarian off balance. But of course, the Hungarians, that is their style. They're so balanced on their feet and don't give up any space unless they need to. Here we can see them retreating quickly, but very comfortable still. Very comfortable just standing still, which is a little bit unusual for some of the other fencers or from other countries. To just be able to sit in one spot and let the hand do the work.
Standing still and being able to regroup quickly as he comes back towards his own end. And not sure he agrees completely with what happened there, but Petra able to get down and get the touch down low to bring Czech back to within 3.
Yeah, so nice move there by Petra, going for the foot. Kind of ducking out of the way as the Hungarian kind of went over his head with the Épée.
So you can see towards the right of the screen as Hungary gets back up by 4. Petra's playing dangerously close to the edge of the piece.
Yeah, so
almost bordering sort of on the end. I think for positioning, that's something you want to do, but in real time, it's really almost careless if you're attacking with a flush on there. You have to be really careful of where your footing is, or else nothing will count.
Yeah, so as soon as you step off the piece, it doesn't count. So it's a little bit of a risky move, I guess, for Petra. But that's his way of kind of closing the distance, and he's trying to line him up in a certain way.
You can see here as Petra just continuously came forward, and it was Redli who was able to get around and actually get the touch. They came together afterwards and sort of embraced, but that was a really good job in close quarters of being able to do that for Hungary.
And they're very comfortable in those situations, close quarters and drawing people out. Of course, this one was a little bit unfocused on the Hungarian side as Petra makes a long lunge into his Hungarian zone. Long
lunge, and the Czech bench is right back into it. It seems as a couple points here and there, and almost as if someone woke them up.
Yeah, so the Czechs are very, very pumped right now. They're trying to stay high, stay motivated, but the Hungarians, of course, not giving up any space. Nice touch there by Redli, just being so patient and so careful with his defensive moves. We see the nice parry there as couple disengages and then parry octave hit by Hungary.
Tough when you're Petra trying to build momentum, and then something like that, the parry that you described as being so good, just comes right back at you and gets at you before you can actually do anything, and the lead is back up to 4. You thought you were gaining momentum and almost got it back to 2, and now here you are back on the offensive again.
Of course, yeah. Petra is playing a very good game. He's moving a lot right now, actually risking it maybe a little bit too much. Maybe a little too much too early, because there's still a lot of other matches to be done.
Is this the time of the match where you have to basically risk it all if you're a Czech fencer? Down by 5? 6 now?
It would be, I think, a little bit premature to start kind of attacking the way he is right now. But maybe that was part of the strategy that the coach gave him, or maybe he just, from experience, he knows that he can do better against Redli. It's hard to say. So he's risking a little bit, I think, in my opinion, too much at this point.
A couple of conversation with the official for the first time, or second time rather, in this match, but seems everything is resolved within the officials, and now just getting a little bit of extra time from the Hungarian bench.
Yeah, we saw kind of a a little bit of an accidental move. Petra went forward and so did Redley, and as he ducked, he hit him right in the stomach. I don't think it was intentional, it just it looks bad. And I think we see a little bit of drama there from the Hungarian fencers, just sitting on the ground. I think he's just trying to recover his energy. Coach coming out to stretch his back. But I think Hungarians have a 6-point lead at this point, so they're in no hurry to kind of get back on the piece. They just want to catch a little bit break.
On the other side, you see Petra pacing back and forth, kind of can't wait to get back to it and hopefully move forward on the offense, trying to get his team back. He knows that if the Czech Republic is going to overcome this deficit, he's going to have to play a major role in it.
Yeah, so it looks like they're relying on Petra now to get the touches back. It's, of course, very risky. Redley's such a good fencer. And now the referee's giving a only the touch to Czech Republic, saying that the Hungarian fencer stepped off the piece. Too bad we don't have the replay for that, but it's a very difficult job for the referee to kind of watch the machine, watch the fencers, and watch the line at the same time, and it's a difficult call to make. So, again, Redley not even backing up, just holding his arm out and kind of opposition to the Czechs' attack.
Yeah, when you were mentioning all the duties of one official per piece, that seems like a whole lot of ground to cover. Maybe a little counterintuitive that much responsibility be placed on someone. Of course, these guys are very good and very experienced, and you know everything about the sport if you're a senior official at an event like this, but that just seems like a whole lot of ground to cover, and you know a lot of angles, like footworks along the baseline. It seems like so many things going on simultaneously.
Yeah, and normally in the finals we will have 3 referees in a match, but at this point usually it's only 1, and it's a difficult job because you have to watch the feet, seeing if he's stepping off the line. You have to watch the footwork. You have to watch the machine at the same time. Make sure that you're stopping the machine. So it's a difficult job, definitely being a referee. Not something I would want to be doing.
Double touch preserves the Hungarian lead at 7 points.
I'm very surprised that Petra keeps going. It's obviously not working because he's even extended the lead, but he just keeps trying. I guess that was their strategy from the beginning. He thought he can make up ground there.
Seems to me like when Petra kept going and going at seemingly the same location, he must have seen something and perhaps a scouting report or heard something. You train with Hungary all the time. You see an area and you have a move that you want to execute with all the double touches. And I think that maybe he thought that if he kept trying, he would be able to get
some kind of
Czech
momentum.
Republic back and back within a couple of points.
Yeah, maybe from experience fencing them all the time in team, maybe he thought, okay, this is a match that I usually feel very comfortable with, but we see missing. He's not on his ball, not on his game as well today as usual. And it's been counterintuitive a little bit. He's extended the lead instead of gotten a momentum going.
Petra playing very down low as well. A couple times he's gotten on a full squat. That's something that we haven't seen very typically of all fighters.
Yeah, so for a tall guy, he's very flexible, very fit. He's able to go down really quickly, go for his opponent's foot, and normally tall guys, they don't just go up and down as easily as this guy does. So now we see him rushing forward, a little bit careless, almost rushing with his blade back, just kind of almost completely exposing himself to the Hungarians.
From our vantage point, you can see he thought, well, however many times, it's been 6 or 7 times he's been able to back Redley back into his area. Redley just able to surprise him and come forward, because once you get in a system with your muscle memory, or so to speak, that time Petra charged through and Redley basically just shoved him off to the side and was able to get the touch, and the lead is now at 8 points.
So
I think that'll conclude the match.
That is the match. I guess we kind of lost track of what match we're in.
But 30-22, the
30-22.
Hungarians win. The Czech Republic never was ahead, never seemed as though they were gaining so much momentum that the match was theirs to win, really. It seemed as though it was holding on, and as Hungary would get a little bit more momentum as the fights turned over, what was a 3-point, 5-point lead ended up being, in the end, 8 full points.
Yeah, so while they had a lead for the first match or two, they after they kind of lost that lead, they were never able to get back into it.
We're heading now over to the red piece, which features the Italians and the Spaniards. I believe 44-38 is the score. 45-38. You see that Garoso, our victor from yesterday, able to get the touch in there, and that signifies the victory. Both teams shaking hands just at the very end of our match here on the yellow piece, where you saw Hungary defeat the Czech Republic.
Very not really surprising that Italy took that match. They're the more highly ranked. They're also the more experienced. Spanish team has some nice veterans like Abajo, but they also have some younger guys that need to still. We're
joining Japan and Switzerland. Pardon me for interrupting.
No problem.
26-31 after that double touch. Minobi from Japan's out there. Piece number 5 here on the other side of the course from us, so we're watching on our teleprompter as well. What can you say about the importance of this for the Japanese being able to squeeze by in the first round after that? A little bit of momentum.
It's actually a little bit surprising that Japan is leading against Switzerland, but in this match, I think that Switzerland has a lot more pressure. They have a lot on the line. They can potentially lose their Olympic spot if they lose this match. So I can see why potentially Japan is leading, but it's very important here that Switzerland regroups if they want to still have that road to Rio.
Yeah, I would liken this to a situation where you kind of don't know any better, where you're not among the big boys. We've seen in recent matches the top 4 or 5 teams in the world, the France, the Ukraines, Hungary, the teams like Italy that are here every year and perennial powerhouses. Switzerland is one of those teams, and yet they find themselves down by 6 here as the match is advancing against Japan, and they must be feeling a little bit loose. Of course, you're very focused, and you want to beat the Swiss is something you might be able to tell your kids about, that you did that at a World Cup, something like that. You want to go to Rio later in the year, but certainly I can tell the surprise on your face that this is happening across the area from us.
So Japan recently, they in the individual World Cup, they did 1 and 2, and this was a very kind of a surprising win and medals by Japan in individual World Cup. And I think they're using that momentum now to kind of regroup as a team and do well as a team, and they're showing some results now. But of course, the Switzerland team here is more, what I would say supposed to win, because based on their ranking and some of their results they've shown in the past. But like we say, anything can happen here, and this is one of those situations. Like 6-point lead is going to be hard to get back on. And we see now Kauter Fabian fencing against the Japanese fencer Yamada, who is basically going to be defensive now, just waiting for him to go forward. So while Switzerland is very comfortable attacking, it's never easy to go on offense. It's always much better to be defending. You're less risky, you less bigger moves that you're going to be doing.
Is that the strategy for Japan? Is you realize there is a finite limit on the amount of time that a match can go on for. You do want to play defense, but you also want to be able to drag things out as well. Now in Europe by 7 points, you just want to be able to hold on till the end? Or do you want to extend it so it's a more resounding victory? You're never really in danger of Switzerland coming back all the way.
So yeah, they will probably be wanting to just let the time play it out, and they're going to be just patiently waiting, stepping back, just going into their zone. They're not going to be, Japan is just going to be kind of waiting for Switzerland to make mistakes and make their moves here. So very challenging situation for Fabian Kauter. Nice flash, but we see Japan being ready. Nice parry pass.
There must be some sort of feeling from the Swiss side that it's been that kind of a day if that type of a flash is just deflected away, and only a Japanese point now, 8-point lead. They must be feeling pretty surprised as well.
They are feeling very comfortable, of course. For Japan, of course, they doesn't change anything. They're ranked 13 in the world. And no matter how they finish here, they're very unlikely to qualify for Rio. So they're just kind of fencing to gain experience and to kind of upset other teams, to seeing what they can do, possibly medal. That would kind of make them build up on their confidence, and it would be very upsetting for Switzerland, of course, to if they lost this match. They got beaten in Switzerland by Canada, so they took a lot of their points away from Team World Cups, and their spot is on the line depending on what happens here, of course.
So from this camera angle, we're afforded the chance to really look at the footwork. Fencing professionals such as yourself, a 5-time national champion, you know how important it is to be able to control the flow of play or the run of how things go. Very different looks here from the Japanese to the Swiss style. Can you just explain a little bit about what you're seeing from the Japanese fencer here, bouncing back and forth, a little bit different from the knee bending that we've seen from some of our other European competitors?
So Japanese fencers, they have a kind of a, I guess, I don't know if we would say their own unique style. They do have a Ukrainian coach, so their footwork might be more like Ukrainian, I guess. Usually, depending on where your coach comes from, what type of technique he has, you will adopt that similar style. When the Switzerland team actually has an Italian coach, so when the Italian coach moved to Switzerland, they completely changed their style. Even though some of these guys were mature and almost like adopted in their their technique, the Italian coach was able to completely change the way they move and the way they move their blade and their feet. So we see the Switzerland guy very dynamic on his feet, slow, very fluid motion in and out, but he's not able to kind of get the Japanese off balance. So that's where they're struggling here with 4 points down, trying to go on the offensive, trying to gain any moves back, any points back.
One thing I'm noticing from watching the Japanese fencer is just how quick they are and agile. Even on defense, you're able to see the getting back 3 steps, moving forward 2 very quickly, and being able to react like we're seeing here with the replay, just in close quarters as the Swiss fencer comes forward, able to turn the body, stay within the piece, and being able to react.
Yeah, we see lots of close quarter actions here as the Switzerland is attacking, getting into that close quarter action, and both of these are rather short fencers, so they have to apply their footwork a lot more than some of the taller guys, where they can just kind of stay very stable. Like the Hungarian guys can stay very stable on their legs, not move very much. So the shorter you are, usually the more you have to move. So you use your other skills to be able to kind of attack the fencer. And for Switzerland now, we're gonna have one of the most experienced fencers coming on, Heinzer Max. Heinzer, he is one that's able to make all kinds of comebacks. Many times we've seen him go on streak. He can go on a 10-point streak easily if need be. Once he gets some momentum going, he's very comfortable attacking people also. It's going to be a very interesting match.
We saw yesterday a couple people that we had come in and out of the commentary booth. Everybody had the same things to say about Max Heinzer, just the speed of his hands and how quickly he can move about. You're not the tallest guy, not the longest reach, but just the way that he can operate around someone who may have a couple of inches on him, but able to just get around and use such fine technique to be able to get to those openings.
Yeah, so Max Heinzer originally came from foil, and then he switched to épée, and he still sometimes treats his weapon like it is a foil, which means like he can just whip it any way he wants to. He's got incredible strength in his hand, and he can make some very quick movements. It's his specialty. His specialty is also being very quick on the feet and just risking it all. He's a guy has no trouble just trying and going for the craziest of moves. And we see him now, he's kind of backing up, but in no sense will we see him only defending. He will be going on offensive very soon.
Yeah, Heinzer all the way back towards his side of the piece. Seemed like he wasn't particularly pressured to get back there. It seems a little counterintuitive with your team down by 5 points.
Yeah, it's a little bit counterintuitive. I think the Japanese just probably doesn't feel comfortable being in his corner, so he just stepped forward right away, and probably trying to go for passivity, trying to push him, so that in 1 minute, if nothing happens, they will go into a passivity. But we'll see Heinzer very quickly now, trying to make an action, trying to make an attack. It's not difficult. It's pretty difficult when you're kind of in your zone. And we see a point by the Japanese. So Heinzer basically had to risk it. There were 2 seconds left, otherwise he would have gone to passivity. So now that he's down even more, so he'll be making much larger moves, large coupes with his hand, and pressuring now the Japanese.
Down by 6, is this the guy if you're Switzerland? Do you want Max Heinzer? Is he the answer, you think, against Japan, who can pull you back within at least a couple of points by the end of this 2-minute period?
I think this is probably the last matchup. We don't know what match they're at, but I think this is the last possibly. So usually Heinzer is the one that closes the matches for Switzerland.
And that's the reason that he is number 9. He's the strongest guy. We see that typically with every country that we've covered so far. The guys who are multiple world time champions, the most experienced guys. That's also why you send out your best, perhaps your best defensive guy for Japan as well.
He's the one, that has no problem holding a lead, but he also, like in a situation like this, we've seen it multiple times. He goes on a streak of 10 points and just obliterates the opponent. So it's very interesting. Let's see what happens.
Do you know who won between Kazakhstan and Russia? So 1 minute and 34 seconds. Max Heinzer right away. Charging, gets the point down within 5. Do you think that type of flesh strategy is going to be able to carry over? Japan, you need to get it 5 times.
But that's what we've seen many times from him. You saw right from the get-go. As soon as the referee said, ready, pre-aller, he just flashed right from his line and is able to get that touch. He's got such quick feet and such quick blade that he's able to make incredible movements and points.
That time the Japanese fence was able to just back up, and acknowledge that he was on the defensive and get in there right before Heinzer could, and there you go, another. You can hear from where we are all the way across the Richmond Oval, the Japanese fencers reacting, knowing that it's pretty much within arm's reach, up by 7 points, and this would be quite an upset.
It would be quite upset if it happened. And the Japanese is very comfortable, seems like, on his back line and just picking Heinzer off on his hand or his body. So we're just still waiting for that train to roll on the Switzerland side, but it looks at this point like Japanese is very comfortable fencing that Switzerland, Swiss style.
How about for the Japanese moving forward now? They're up by 7 points with 1 minute and 20. Obviously, anything can happen, but the acknowledgement, Kazakhstan, the 11th seed, beat Russia earlier on in the day, so Japan, as the number 14 seed, will go on and play Kazakhstan. How do you think they match up? Anything you're looking for there?
We will see, I guess. They're both in the same zone. They're both in the Asian zone, Kazakhstan and Japan. So they've fenced each other many times. They know each other's weaknesses and strength. And I don't want to be biased here. I was trained by a Ukrainian coach, Russian coach, so I tend to cheer sometimes for the Soviet side because that's the fencing that I know. But it's going to be a close match. They have both really, really experienced good fencers on either team.
I think that could be a positive thing, or something that you could also be really disappointed with at tournaments like this. Is a couple of times today we've seen teams that have trained together. Guys are friends, Czech Republic, Hungary, certainly very well acquainted with each other. Guys that are in the same zones. Out of all these teams, you happen to play the guys that you actually know and you fence all the time. Can that be an advantage, or just disappointing on a personal level that, if you're Canada, you don't get to see the Israelis for the first time, as we were illustrating earlier? You are on the Czech team, and you trained with Hungary 2.5 weeks ago, yet here we are facing against each other, and one of you might get to go to Rio and the other not.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a challenging situation. You want to fence a guy you're comfortable with, like you fence all the time, but at the same time, it's very heartbreaking when you lose such a match. And then, like for example, Canada fenced many times against the States, and it's always been back and forth. And they qualified for the Olympic Games twice, just a bit ahead of us, and it was such a heartbreak. But that's sport. There's always a winner and a loser.
See there, Heinzer getting the touch in. Brings the Swiss deficit to 7 points, but 53 seconds left. What do you think we're going to see for the rest of the way? Japan just continually backing up, or can he afford to do that yet? There's still 53 seconds, and 7 points isn't a whole lot, as we see Japan go straight forward and get the touch.
Yeah, so it's with 8 touches ahead, 47 seconds is still a lot of time for somebody like Heinzer, but it's very unlikely now at this point with 1 point to go that Switzerland will make a comeback.
44-35 the score for Japan, and I know us here in the booth when we tuned over to that game, all respect to Japan, but a little bit surprised. The Swiss have been prone to a couple of upsets here over these 2 days here in Vancouver. We had a couple of guys go out in the earlier rounds yesterday. Now here's the 3 seed. Switzerland not perhaps living up to the reputation as a powerhouse team.
So definitely, this is what usually happens with sometimes the strong teams is when you get into that last year of qualification, it sometimes is just how mentally strong are you. Of course, you want it so badly. You want to qualify for the Olympic Games. You've been working for 4 years, 10 years, maybe, who knows how long. But it's always such a different situation, the qualifiers, the qualifying year.
With the Swiss backs against the wall, of course, Japan only needs 1 more point to qualify, or for 25 seconds to tick off, and you can see the reaction right there. Japan is through to the round of 8. So he shakes hands with Max Heinzer. Everybody on the Swiss side has to be a little disappointed. They know what this loss means. Japan, you're saying number 13th ranked team in the world, just coming out here for experience, and I think moving forward, this win will do a lot in terms of morale, and they might even be able to carry this thing forward. They're facing Kazakhstan in the round of 8 with a chance to move on to the semis.
Yeah, so there's it's really anybody's game there against Japan versus Kazakhstan. Anybody could win it. Both teams are in the same zone, so they're potentially both fighting for the spot to go to the Olympics. With the Switzerland upset and the Russia being upset here, Korea could potentially move into the top 4. And if they move into the top 4, that would open up a spot for Japan or Kazakhstan to qualify for the Olympic Games. More likely would be Kazakhstan, as Kazakhstan is ranked 8th and Japan is ranked 13th in the world right now. So, lots of upsets as we see. Russia and Switzerland both losing in the round of 16.
Just a reminder, you can relive every moment again. You can find all archived media from yesterday and today at viasport.ca/media. And don't forget, you can connect with us on social media at ViaSportBC and also by using the hashtag ViaSportMedia. Thank you for tuning in to our coverage of the 2016 Peter Baccani Vancouver Fencing World Cup on Viasport. I am your host, Chris Brentlinger-Grant. Been joined by Tigran Baccanish from the Canadian Fencing Society for the last couple of hours. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you soon with the quarterfinal action in the men's senior team competition.